Top start to the show from Matthew.
I will just
What's going on with the
it's
wardrobe
clear.
here?
Listen,
the green
I was
under the Commander's maroon.
well, it was
Just doesn't fit at all.
whatever.
It's like you just opened that up for Christmas and put it on.
The grey
The
pants.
jersey.
The jersey. No,
Yeah.
I mean it's Victory Monday. It's the jersey I always wear.
It's the green
It's the
underneath.
green undershirt.
Oh, the green undershirt.
Yeah.
You look like Jimmy McNulty after a tough night on The Wire in season 5.
might have.
Towers.
It's basically your aesthetic right now. Amplified
honestly,
by this ridiculous green undershirt.
I have to tell you, McNulty looked rough pretty much every season of The Wire.
Legendary.
The
Strike me as
character.
a Lieutenant Rolls.
You know what? I came back for this.
Yeah.
Guys
We
are
couldn't wait
rolls.
to see you today.
Clearly.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right. Wherever you are out there in the world, Rawls from The Wire. Drinks for free today at the Happy Hour Bar. Stop by.
Yeah.
Have a pint with McNulty over here.
I screwed up. His title isn't Lieutenant. It's Superintendent Rolls.
Well,
So
yeah, it's
sorry,
how-
Rolls, if you're watching.
Depends on the
I
season.
told you.
At the end of the
Yeah,
spoiler
true.
alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for ruining the end of the show. He's superintendent.
Acting Commissioner Rolls for a time.
Not everybody's on season 5.
Yeah, true. Well, season 5's not great.
The window passed.
Oh, look at this.
They
You
ran.
do look stunningly similar.
Wow.
Stunning.
I don't know about stunningly, but closer than I would like. to be honest
What a
with you.
shot.
Yeah, it
Great
is.
man.
It's a very angry looking Rawls in that, which is
He was
basically the
he was
character
angry a
all
lot
the
on
time.
the show.
It's hard to find a happy picture.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I'm
Not the
sure not a
smartest
lot.
character.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad the green undershirt's gone. Glad we got through that.
Yeah. Well,
I think you should bring it back. If
I
the
know.
Commanders
Just
win,
without
you
it.
should bring it back because we know you're going to wear the jersey.
I will tell you 2 things.
I'm now rooting for the
The
Commanders.
green undershirt is currently in my dressing room, and I wore it here. It's an NBC Sports T-shirt, and it's incredibly comfortable.
Okay.
Incredibly
a good
comfortable.
cotton?
Doesn't matter.
It's so good. It's so comfy.
All right.
Faded grey jeans, green undershirt, Commanders jersey.
Jayden Daniels.
Stuff and
Faith in
nightmares.
5.
Stuff and nightmares.
Stick around Monday.
Nathan
It might
yeah,
reappear.
Victory Monday. I'll wear it again.
You
on
literally
Victory
have
Monday.
to if it's a victory Monday.
Obviously, I totally will. By the way, you know who else thinks the Commanders might win is Jay Croucher.
I do like the Commanders.
Yeah.
I might get to that at
Well,
some
in your
point.
words, though, I also don't care who
That's
wins.
true. I don't have any care at all as to whether they triumph.
Yeah.
Part of me kind of wants them to lose, but I would like to be right. And have them
So
win.
it's a win-win for you because either you're right,
Yes.
or it causes me tremendous pain.
Exactly. Win-win.
It's called an emotional hedge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good spot to be in.
Well, we got a full wild card weekend preview coming your way today. Matthew's top-ranked players for any playoff fantasy formats. We're going to talk a lot of DFS and betting today. Of course, we'll close out the show with our best player props for wild card weekend. Let's jump right into the wild card preview for Saturday's games. Of course, we start with the first one. The Chargers are favored by 3 points, traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. A low total in this one, only 42.5 points. Joe Mixon, obviously one of the most notable fantasy-relevant players in this game. We got to hear from him on a do-or-die attitude going into the playoffs.
People don't understand, like, how hard is it to be in the playoffs. You know, people be like, oh, like, I'm sure people that went home last week, they be like, man, you know what, we got next year. Like, nah, that's not how that works. You know what I'm saying? Like, people usually had they 2 and 3 year periods where they make their run and, you know, they do certain things. And, you know, I tell the guys, like, right now, like, the time is now to strike. It ain't no next year, it ain't none of that. You know what I'm saying? It's right now. And what you gonna do with your opportunity? Like I said, you gotta put your best shit on tape. And I feel like I said, right now, we primed to do that.
Well, prime to do that, says Joe Mixon. I think that's because Joe Mixon hasn't actually watched the Texans over the last month.
Last year.
I mean, they've been bad. But Joe Mixon's right. I mean, as he sits there and looks at his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals, whose window may or may not be closed. Like, everyone thought, there are some people that called them a Super Bowl contender, the Bengals, and they're missing the playoffs.
With Joe Burrow, they always are, but
Of
man,
course,
did a
but,
lot go wrong.
A lot went wrong. You saw all the players there on your screen. I think, look, Mixon is interesting in this game just because they have, for better for worse, committed to the run this year. Like, Bobby Slowick is just like, I don't care what the scoreboard says. I don't care what the defense is giving us. We're just handing it off to Joe Mixon early and often. He played 60% of the snaps, but averaged 24 touches a game.
Yeah. Well, the thing is as well is the Texans, efficiency-wise, they literally have the worst running game in football. This is like, it's not the same, but it's like, all right, I got Lamar Jackson, I got Derrick Henry, I got Zay Flowers. We're going to base the offense around Justice Hill. Let's just do the thing that we do worst, and we'll just do it over and over again.
Right.
Because in terms of success rate, in terms of EPA, it just hasn't been effective whatsoever. But I just don't think they're going to change at this point. Colin.
No, this is who they are, who they want to be. And I think another thing, Lawrence, is the interior of this offensive line has not been able to keep C.J. Stroud upright the entire season. That's been a giant liability, and that's probably why they get run heavy at times.
Yeah, you saw that on Christmas when they just could not handle the Ravens. So on both fronts for their offensive line, pass game and running game, but they're gonna have to try to stick with the run against the Chargers as best as possible because they're a good defense overall. But if you're gonna nitpick, they're better on the back end in the pass defense than they are run defense. They're a top 7 pass defense, but Joe Mixon hasn't run for more than 60 yards in a game since week 14, and that's a long time, especially when you saw how he started out this first half of the season, but you can still bank on him getting those 20 touches.
What's going on with this athletics hat and Ravens jersey combo? Explain yourself.
Wait. Now, it's one thing to talk about Matthew's fashion in his green shirt. If you come for me, you better not miss.
I mean, it's a great point, Lawrence.
I didn't realize about the Ravens jersey.
Lawrence, let me give you a little.
This is the Ravens jersey? Oh, yeah, I guess it is.
Let me give you a little advice that me and you can hang our hats on. We dress ourselves, Lawrence and I.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
Jay's throwing stones from the biggest glass house.
You be getting fashion tips like Barry?
No, exactly. First off, they dress Jay. They dress me as well. So I mean, you're sitting here insulting like our beautiful wardrobe department. They're so great. They do a great job for us.
I'm a single
up and
player in the
down.
Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic.
That's why it's the Braves.
I can.
And you understand that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lawrence, in year 1 of the show, Jay was showing up in like discount New York Liberty jerseys that were a size too small.
Street
so
vendors.
They won the title.
I mean, I don't want to hear it from like the last person that should be throwing stones. Honestly, is me. I dress myself carefully. But the second to last person that should be throwing stones is you.
I was about to say, how you gonna go at Matthew and you let them like that? You got a stylist.
But Matthew makes the PR move of getting out in front of it. He goes, I don't dress myself. I'm not giving fashion advice. That's good PR.
I own it.
Yeah.
I own it. I've said this, and this is good advice for you youngins coming up in the industry, and for anyone else that wants to get into media in some way, shape, or I believe that the public will accept almost anything as long as you are honest with them.
True.
As long as you are honest with them. The public is very accepting on all levels.
See where you're
It's
going
just
there.
as,
And you
as
held
long
yourself
as you
together.
are honest. You know what I mean? Like, just don't get caught in a lie.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of things that I do poorly, I have a sequel to my Giants 80-1 NFC East bet.
Is that the Texans to make the Super Bowl?
It's the Texans to win the Super Bowl. They're 100-1. So before the season, the Texans were 16-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
If I told you before the season they were going to win the division, their 6 best players, I would say, C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, let's see if I can remember them all, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Derek Stingley, Laramie Tunsil. I think those are their 6 most important players, all healthy. Now, they've been bad for quite a while, but there is still upside in this team. They're 100-1. They're on the right side of the bracket as well. They have a home game, then they get to play the Chiefs instead of the Ravens or the Bills. I'm just saying, there is still upside and variance in C.J. Stroud. I'm not giving up on
There
Stroud.
is. No Stephon Diggs, no Tank Dell. Their number
Nuts.
2 receiver is John Mechie, right?
right.
And, you mentioned Joe Mixon hasn't been effective all that well. And so, I mean, the line opened at Chargers minus 2.5. I believe they're the only road favorite in the entire first round of the
this
playoffs. And it's actually moved to 3.
Yeah.
Right? So people are betting the Chargers.
Give me the Texans.
I'm about to say, do you think the Texans are going to win this game?
You like the Texans plus 3?
I like the Texans
I like
plus
the
3.
Chargers minus 2.5. I don't know if I would go to the 3.
Just think about, like, this is saying that if the game was in LA, that it'd be Chargers minus 7. Like, really? Chargers be touchdown favorites over the Texans? I understand that it's been bad, but this is a really good defense, and still C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. I don't know. I think the Texans, they're probably not going to go anywhere, but I think there's still variance in the team.
I buy that. I will tell you, I'm picking the Chargers. I like the Chargers minus 2.5. I'm not sure I would go to the 3, but I like the Chargers minus 2.5. I will say this, though, just to give you some ammo for your side of this argument. Justin Herbert's played like basically one playoff game, right? And he blew it against Jacksonville. Now, I don't know if that was all his fault, but I mean, like, that was the one playoff game we've seen him recently in was that game against Jacksonville where the Jaguars came back. They were down like, what, a 27-3 or whatever, and they ended up losing that game. Yep. C.J. Stroud won his first playoff game last year at home against the Browns. Everyone thought the Browns were going to come in. We didn't. You and I picked the Texans in that game. So my point is in terms of experience, right? And so you've got a more experienced team on the Texan side of the ball in terms of the playoffs than you do necessarily the Chargers. Rashawn Slater might miss this game, right?
That'd be big with the Texans edge tandem. That's a problem.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
So if Herbert's,
it's already a problem.
Yeah,
it's already a problem, but right, exactly. So if he doesn't, so Herbert could be under pressure quite a bit. All that said, give me Jim Harbaugh over D'Amico Ryans because I think the shine has come off Ryans a bit this year as a coach.
Yep, no, I agree.
Let's just briefly touch on the pass catchers for the Chargers in this one. They were priced a little lower, obviously. Nico Collins and Joe Mixon were above them. Lad McConkey, $6,800 in DFS. Quentin Johnston, Matthew, who has had some peaks this season after a disappointing rookie season. Is he any value at $4,800?
One team in the NFL has allowed more touchdowns to wide receivers than the Houston Texans. They're tied for the second most that they've allowed. They've given up 21 touchdowns to wide receivers this season. So QJ, who had a monster game in Week 18.
It was the quietest 186
I ever seen. It was insane. But maybe there's some confidence there as well. I think given the struggles of the offensive line of the Chargers and how strong the Texans are on the defensive line, I think J.K. Dobbins will struggle to move the ball. So I do think the way that they move the ball, the Chargers do, is through the air. I understand the line is 42.5. I probably would take the under. I don't know that I want to bet this total, but if I had to pick a side, I think I might take the under here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. But there is certainly a chance that QJ gets deep for one. They're going to take some shots. McConkey's the more interesting guy to me. 25% target share over his final 7 games. He averaged over 18 fantasy points per game. He's just, it's sort of crazy as you think about we're ranking rookies for next year. Probably the number one rookie wide receiver for next year is Brian Thomas Jr. Then maybe Malik Neighbors. Yeah. Him and Malik Neighbors are sort of right there, but McConkey's third. You prefer McConkey next year to Marvin Harrison Jr. You prefer him to Rome Odunze. Yeah. You prefer him to anyone else that was a rookie wide receiver this year. McConkey's been nothing short of fantastic.
Over 1,100 yards, and he missed games.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I do think the slot is somewhere where you can attack Houston.
Another game, guys, with the low total on the same day. The Saturday games totals, 42.5, like we said, Chargers, Texans, 43.5. For the Steelers at Baltimore, where Baltimore now is a 9.5-point favorite. Lawrence, you got the Ravens jersey on today. Derrick Henry, of course, at the top of the board on DFS at $8,200. No surprise in terms of the volume and the level of play the King still has.
Yeah, even with this low over/under, I would go, if I'm going to go heavy, especially if I'm going heavy running back in this game, I would look towards Rashod Bateman, especially with Zay Flowers not expected to play. They say he's a long shot to play. When Zay Flowers went out there last game, Bateman ended up catching 5-8 targets, 76 yards, getting a touchdown. So he automatically turns into their wide receiver one. He was already kind of their big play receiver with Zay Flowers in the game. Wasn't a lot of volume, but he could always get that big play. So now more so, he should get more opportunities.
More of a narrow target tree, obviously, with Zay Flowers on the shelf. So I also think Mark Andrews, who scored in 6 straight games, he's got 11 touchdowns in his past 12. He suddenly becomes pretty interesting. I do think the middle of the field, again, is a good place to attack Pittsburgh.
Yep. I have to say, I'm stunned that this line is pushing towards 10. Steelers plus 10, really? This line was, I think it was 6.5 when they played a few weeks ago. I understand that the Steelers have not played well since then. The offense looks broken. But this is still Mike Tomlin. It's still TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. I think that the Steelers have a chance to wreck the game with their defensive line. And, AFC North rivalry game. I would take, if I don't feel good about it, it's yucky, but I'd be taking the Steelers, particularly against
Tomlin has been bad against the spread as an underdog in the playoffs. He's usually really good. And when Tomlin's an underdog in the regular season, he's great against the spread, but it hasn't been as strong in the playoffs.
When they played the Steelers that game on Christmas or right before Christmas, I took the Ravens minus 13.5 and felt extremely confident about that. I'm not taking that number this time, but I do like them to cover. And it's because I think they're going to run the ball. You spoke about them being able to wreck the game, which they can. That's if this game gets into like some kind of passing game script on both sides, which I don't really see that happen. I think it's going to be Derrick Henry running, Lamar running.
I think that's what scares you in this one, is that the Steelers are going to be put into a pass funnel. And does anybody want to hear that? Like, does anyone want to see Russell Wilson right now in a pass funnel, what we saw from George Pickens at the end of the year? Freiermuth's been fine. Yeah. I mean, he's relevant fantasy-wise in this one, but I
probably
think that's
the best value
listen,
on their offense.
Pat Freiermuth is $4,400 on DraftKings if you're playing DFS this weekend. He's had 11 or more fantasy points 5 of the past 6 games. Again, we know the secondary of the Ravens is an area to attack. I'm with you, though. Like, you don't want them to be in a – you definitely don't want Russell Wilson in a shootout against Lamar Jackson, right? And it's very quietly, the Steelers, over the last final 4 weeks of the season, they were 28th against the pass. I mean, they just, again, they got lit up on Christmas Day against the Chiefs, right? They got lit up by the Steelers. They've sort of limped into the playoffs here.
Yeah, and we were lit up as a show for criticizing Russell Wilson after he was running hot after his first few weeks, where every single deep pass was being completed because it was bouncing off the hands of Jets cornerbacks into Pat Freiermuth. Well, Russ doesn't look so great right now. I think that the thing with Russ, though, is at least that as an underdog, he does give you variance because he does throw the ball deep. And Pickens is a player who does just create variance just by his nature. Yeah. Where he could be, like, would you be stunned if George Pickens went for 110 yards? Would you be stunned if he had 0 yards? Like, anything can happen with this guy. And so as an underdog, and also just the defensive line of the Steelers also creates a little bit of variance with just their ability to define the game. But yeah, like, the Ravens are probably going to win. They're probably going to win comfortably. It's just that if the line gets to 10, which it's inching towards, it's a lot of points.
That's a lot of points for two teams that do not like each other, that for years and years and years, even if one team was running bad, they always play each other tough. They truly hate each other. Third time they're seeing each other this season as well. It's going to be cold in Baltimore. The line's 43.5. So you're saying, like, hey, if it's a low-scoring game here, and you've got, like, you feel like the Steelers are able to somewhat keep it close. This feels like a grinded-out, ugly AFC North type game.
Yeah, and also, like, the Steelers against the Bengals, it felt like the Steelers were atrocious in that game. The offense could do nothing. Like, they lost the game by 2 points. Like, the defense is still very solid. So, yeah, I think this might be a bit closer than people expect.
All right, let's jump into Sunday's games and, of course, the Monday game here. And we start with the Broncos at the Bills. Another big favorite here for the Bills. They're 8.5-point favorites against Denver. The over-under higher in this one, 46.5, not only because of how potent Josh Allen and co are, but also the fact the Bills' defense have given up enough points this year. Let's hear from Josh Allen on just how much of a tough matchup this is against that strong Denver defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just taking it. You got to put one foot in front of the other. It's a team that came in here last year and they beat us. We know that. We understand that. It's a very good team. They're well coached. Their defensive line is one of the best in the league. They got a couple guys outside that can absolutely go. Obviously, look at Surtain, one of the best corners in the game. We're going to have our hands full. So, again, we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, take it day by day and have a good week of practice, and then try to go out there and execute on Sunday.
No surprise here, Matthew. Josh Allen priced at $8,200, and then a pretty steep cliff after that in this one.
Well, 9 rushing touchdowns in his last 7 games for Josh Allen. If you're paying up a quarterback, this is an area where I would want to go. Over 28 fantasy points per game for him. Shakir is really interesting there at 5,300. 10 straight games with at least 6 or more targets, 25% target share for Shakir. He plays the slot. He's going to avoid Pat Surtain. I do think he is somebody that, they spread it around so much. But Shakir feels like one of the guys that at least there's a floor there in terms of his usage. The rest of the ancillary pass catchers for the Bills is just sort of catch can. I feel the same way about the Broncos running backs, but I do think that if you're in a large scale tournament, if you're not playing like just a smaller tournament, but if you're in a GPP on DraftKings, if you're in like a big thing, well, you're looking for variance, and so that's where I think people will avoid the Bills pass catchers. I think people will avoid the Broncos running backs because of that, because there's such uncertainty. And, when you're in those large field tournaments, that's what you want, is you want lineups that aren't going to be duplicated.
Yeah, and that's when you want those. When you have those, you want guys like Marvin Mims You want him as your third wide receiver, right? It's 4 receiving touchdowns in his last 2 games. And then you look at Bo Nix, 9 touchdown passes, 1 interception his last 3 games. Albeit against the Chiefs in Week 18, that was their backups, but still, Bo Nix went toe-to-toe with Burrow. He had a good game against the Chargers here. So I think, and you mentioned it, Connor, you mentioned the Bills' defense down the stretch they just been giving it up on the back end. They're good up front and in the front 7, but on the back end, they can be had.
Yep. The one thing with the Broncos, too, is that with Patrick Surtain, who I think I've watched every one of his snaps the past 2 months because I'm sickeningly invested in him to win Defensive Player of the Year. But the thing with Surtain is that as much as he is a shutdown corner, he doesn't really trail guys for the whole time. Like when he played Ja'Marr Chase, which was the big marquee matchup, Chase v. Surtain. Yeah, Surtain was on him, but it was on him for like 77% of the routes. Like he doesn't follow everywhere, doesn't usually go into the slot, and it's not as relevant with the Bills because they don't have the one guy that you want to shut down. But I wouldn't be thinking like, oh, Surtain's definitely going to go to Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper is a 0 in this game. Like he does move around.
Jay, what about the line in this one? 8.5. I mean, we heard it from Josh Allen. This Denver defense, they're stout up front. They have the best cover corner in the game. It's not disrespectful because the Bills are that great of a team, but I've been on Denver since this launched, and I'm actually surprised it hasn't moved.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'm just interested to see how the Broncos offense is able to perform if they do get behind. Now, Bo Nix was awesome against Kansas City, but that wasn't really a real game of football with just playing the backups. It was just all so easy. So interested to see how he does playing from behind. Now, he did come from behind against the Bengals and force overtime and played, I think, okay in that game. But I think it just all depends on, like, how good do you think the Broncos defense is? Do you think this is like a best in the league type of defense? Or is it more just, your standard solid top 5 type of defense? And I think how one's opinion varies on that will determine whether they keep this close.
The Broncos defense has played very well this year, but they haven't played a lot of tough games. The Broncos don't really have like a bunch of like signature wins where you're like, man, they went into Baltimore and they killed the Ravens. You know what I mean? They don't have a lot of
but they got
wins.
Killed that game.
No, exactly. But that's my point. Is,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right,
I'm just saying, like, the Broncos have beaten up on a lot of bad teams, and that's what you should do. But like, they played a last place schedule.
You could argue the loss to the Chiefs the first time they played was maybe the best
That was
game.
their best game.
Correct.
Their best game.
played
That was a
because
loss.
Because they lost on the blocked field goal,
Right.
which was like a fluky play.
To outright win the game, who do y'all like more to have an upset between either the Broncos or the Steelers?
I like the Broncos because of Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton will know how to attack this Buffalo defense. Now, am I confident they could stop Josh Allen and company? No, it's the reason it's an 8.5-point line.
I would say this. Between those two, I'd actually say the Steelers because it's a division game. They've already beaten the Ravens once before. We have certainly seen Lamar choke in the playoffs or perform under expectations. And so, and you're right. Like, anytime you've got somebody like TJ Watt on your team that can just completely disrupt a game, like he's that guy. I'll say that I actually think there are better choice. If you're asking me, give me one upset this weekend for Wild Card Weekend. Like, I think there are better choices. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, we're going to get to this game next. Maybe this is a good transition.
Yeah.
I think the Packers have a legit shot at winning this game. Like, especially because, by the way, Jalen Hurts was limited in practice yesterday. He finally returned, but he hasn't been cleared from the concussion protocol. It's been over 3 weeks since he's played meaningful football, Jalen Hurts. So even if he starts in this game, who knows? Packers run the ball very well. They don't really turn the ball over, and so I could see the Packers, who held their own for much of the game in Brazil at the very beginning of this year, right? Ultimately, the
Came
Eagles
right down to the end.
Yeah, ultimately the Eagles ended up winning that game and kind of pulled away, but they were neck and neck right there, and so depends on the health of Jordan Love, but Packers play good defense and they run the ball well, and anytime you do those two things in the playoffs, you got a shot.
Yep. Connor, the thing with the Packers defense, the thing that's been most glaring to me over the past couple of weeks, particularly in that Minnesota game where Sam Darnold, he just eviscerated them over the middle of the field. Like, it was all over the middle. That's where he really carved them up. Jalen Hurts doesn't really use the middle of the field that much. He's more of, throwing go balls to A.J. Brown. They're going to lean on the run a ton. Like, how do you think that the Eagles match up with the Packers?
In theory, this is a game where you should throw the ball to Saquon Barkley because I don't think Green Bay's been very good against pass-catching running backs, but they don't throw to Saquon Barkley a lot. It's really 1 or 2 chances a game, so hopefully that's a strategy that changes. Edgerrin Cooper's been awesome as a rookie linebacker, but that's it. They need more help in the middle of the field besides him.
Yeah, I actually like this game, Matthew. I like an alt line on this. I like Eagles 8.5.
Really?
Yeah, I like Eagles. You mentioned the Brazil game. Eagles defense back then was closer to what they were last year.
I agree.
Than what they are now. I think when we talk about all of these defenses in the playoffs that remain, I would say they have the best combo of, run defense and then pass defense. I'll say that. And then for the Packers, you lose your deep threat in Christian Watson. Now, we know Packers don't have the receivers don't really do much, but collectively they do, and they're losing a piece of that there. So if the Packers can't run the ball, then where do you turn to next? Because the Eagles are good at every level of the field on defense.
My approach to betting this game would be, I like both teams minus 8.5 because I worry about either of these passing games to play from behind, and I just think that these teams, they're so dependent on leaning on the run, on playing off of play action, the Packers taking deep shots with Jordan Love off of play action, and I just worry that you get Hurts or Love into pure drop back passing sets. I just don't think they're quite as effective, so I wouldn't be surprised if it got out of hand in either direction.
The difference there is that one team got A.J. Brown and the other team don't.
Right.
I'm surprised. I will just say this. The line's 45.5 in terms of the over-under. And you think about this. Over the last 4 weeks of the season, the Packers, the third best rush defense in the NFL, the sixth best pass defense. The Eagles, eighth best run defense, number one pass defense.
Yeah.
Both of them are top 4 in the NFL in terms of scoring defenses. You have two defenses playing at a very, very high level, and you've got two quarterbacks that are banged up. That, neither guy is going to come in, even if Hurts and Love start in this game, neither are 100%. Love got hurt, obviously, in the last game and had to come out. Malik Willis came in. Jalen Hurts is dealing with the concussion protocol. Even if he's fully cleared, again, he missed each of the last 2 weeks and only played a quarter against the Commanders. So, it's been a long time since Jalen Hurts has been able to play a full NFL game. It's been almost a month. And so I think I'd like the under in this game, and I'm with you. It feels like, you've got two good defenses against two offenses that have question marks.
Yeah, it's a tough draw for both of these teams as well to get each other, because just in terms of how the market rates these teams, it's Philadelphia, Green Bay, and Detroit are rated as the three best teams in the NFC. I think the Vikings kind of showed some of their weaknesses. They would be next. But, yeah, the fact that they have to play eeach other in the 2-7 and it's not, Tampa or the Rams or the Commanders, the matchup, it's a tough break for Philly in particular, who earned the 2 seed.
Who do y'all like the Lions to come out the NFC?
Yes.
I like the Eagles to
Me too.
to represent.
I'm on the Eagles, yeah.
I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, but I think that the Lions are the most likely to come out just because they get the bye. They don't have to play this extra game against the Packers, which could be a loss.
And this wears you out, this game.
They don't have to play the extra game, and by the way, they're at home.
Which is huge.
I was there last week with Football Night in America at that Vikings-Lions game. The atmosphere in Ford Field is ridiculous, and it's just, you talk about Arrowhead or Seattle or some of the toughest places to play in the NFL. Ford Field is right up there. Those guys get crazy.
Ford Field, they conjured the ghosts for Sam Darnold, which had been lying dormant for 5 years, and they resurfaced because of that crowd.
Yeah, that is a legitimate advantage. It's not always an advantage. There's not every home stadium is like that, but in Detroit and Ford Field, it absolutely is. Very quickly on players in this game, if you want to pay up for Saquon, I got it. 7 games with 25 or more fantasy points this season. He led all running backs. He's obviously going to get a massive workload here. I do think DeVonta Smith at 5,700 is interesting. In the 4 games since he returned in Week 14, he's got a 35% target share. Now, some of that was with Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee, right? But still, the fact of the matter is DeVonta Smith is cheaper and does feel like, because if I'm Green Bay, you know what I mean? I feel like we're not going to let Saquon Barkley beat us. If we lose to DeVonta Smith, if we lose to the Jalen Hurts, we're going to take our chances with the Jalen Hurts passing it, because we're not going to let Saquon beat us. So.
All right, guys, the last Sunday game, the Commanders at the Bucs. Matthew, your Commanders back in the playoffs. 3-point underdogs.
Faith in 5,
this game.
baby.
The over-under scorching in this one, 50.5. Jay, since the beginning, you've been on the Commanders getting those 3 points.
Yeah, and I think there's this kind of narrative and sense that, Jayden Daniels, rookie in the first playoff game, worried about how he's going to perform. I'm not concerned about Jayden Daniels at all. In these big moments, when he's had to go down the field and drive to win against the Falcons, against the Eagles, he is built for these big moments. I'd be more worried about Baker Mayfield, because I think that Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback. I think that they have the advantage there Very worried about how Todd Bowles manages these end-of-game situations as well. Don't have any confidence there. And I just don't think the Bucs have a particularly good pass defense.
No,
they
don't.
The Bucs
It's not
basically.
a great team.
Neither do the Commanders. And fair,
don't.
but Lattimore, if Lattimore's practiced fully so far this week, so assuming Lattimore goes on Sunday, that's a big boon. Him and Mike Evans have had a ton of. Listen, if they both get ejected, they both get ejected.
Right. You take that
I'll
trade.
take it. I'll take it. I'll sign up for that
I'll
right
take
now.
our corner who ain't played half the season anyway.
For Mike Evans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what they should
Like,
be telling him.
Right, exactly.
I would
Listen.
consider this an upset if the Bucs won the game, to be honest.
Thank you, Lance.
I'm not worried about Jayden Daniels either. Not against the Bucs. Not against a Bucs team that was struggling with the Saints in Week 18 just to win the sorry NFC South. Like, is that the weakest division in football? I think it might be. They're there battling with the Falcons, who battling with the Panthers. None of these is actually good teams. They just happen to be in that division. So I would feel like this game is an upset if the Commanders lose. Like, this would be bad for them.
I mean, Commanders won 12 games this year. Buccaneers won 10. Commanders also played down to the Saints. I mean, they needed to stop at 2
But
points.
that game wasn't I know the scoreline was closer. The Commanders dominated that game. It was bizarre.
They did, and then they let them back in,
Missed
and
a
then
field goal.
it was a the
But
weird thing with the clock.
Jayden Daniels, 2 good games. Even the game the Commanders lost to the Eagles, he was good that game. They beat the Eagles. He looked good against the Ravens. So Jayden Daniels has looked good against some of the top teams in the league. The Bucs are where they are because they in the NFC South.
1,000%. I mean, again, I think the Buccaneers are hosting this game because they won a division, but like, just if you rank teams by record,
Right.
the Commanders would be the higher seed. I'm a little surprised to see Terry McLaurin at 6,500 compared with 7,900 for Mike Evans. McLaurin has scored in 5 of the past 6 games. He's got 7 total touchdowns over the stretch. Again, like, the Buccaneers secondary is a weakness for them. I think if the Commanders are to win this game, it's going to have to be on the arm of Jayden Daniels and throwing the ball versus being able to run, because both teams, well, especially the Buccaneers, are stronger on the defensive line than they are in the secondary. I think this is probably a big Bucky Irving game as well, or at least they try to make it so.
Let's not forget that Kirk Cousins threw for like almost 1,000 yards in 2 games against the Bucs and had like 8 touchdowns against them. This is not a particular. Spencer Rattler did whatever he wanted for a half. Spencer Rattler scored 0 points against the Green Bay Packers for an entire game. This isn't a great defense. Now, I do think that the Bucs, I think they have a very good offense, and Baker Mayfield's played at a very high level.
Yes.
Of all the kind of coordinators, head coaches in this game, the guy who I have the most faith in is Liam Cohen.
I agree.
I think that he has just gotten everything out of this offense possible, but ultimately, in terms of the outcome of the game, I just don't understand why the Commanders are 3-point dogs. And look, I don't think this is going to happen. Wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to me if in a couple of weeks, Matthew, the Commanders are hosting an NFC title game against the Packers. I wouldn't be shocked. Would you be stunned if the Commanders beat the Bucs and then beat like the Rams next week, and the Packers beat the Eagles and the Lions? Like, I don't think that's crazy.
No, it's definitely not crazy. I think it's unlikely.
It's very unlikely, but
it's
in the realm of
not.
possibility.
It's not outside of the realm of possibility. I mean, I do think the Commanders host. This is why I wanted them to beat the Cowboys so bad. Is that I did think they got by far the best draw of any of the teams in the lower half as well. So
it could be Bucs,
which is
then
crazy
Rams
too, because
to
like
get to the NFC
Bucs
title
and
game.
then Rams.
you got the Eagles at the 2 seed playing the Packers. If you're the Commanders, like, you gotta be like loving this.
1,000% as well. And listen, Baker's playing at a very high level as well. But like, if Lattimore can shut down Mike Evans, then their offense basically becomes Bucky Irving and Jalen McMillan.
Right.
And so you'll take your chances with the rookie wide receiver as good as he's played. And the Commanders have been very up and down with their run defense, but like, when they wanted to, they shut down Saquon Barkley in the second half of that game. And I understand Kenny Pickett was starting, but still, like they have had moments where they have been played really elite run defense, and then they've had moments where you're just like, they look like the Jets and people are running all over them. So it depends on which team shows
Random
up.
Jets
Shows up
playoff
here,
Who are the
But-
Jets playing this week?
but whether it was come back on the Saints against
Lions.
the Eagles, against the the Hail Mary against the Bears, like it does feel like every single week the Commanders have said, like, listen, 5, we've put you in this hole.
Yeah.
We need you to make a crazy drive down here, beat the Falcons, whatever. And Jayden Daniels like, all right, and he goes and does it. Like it's unbelievable.
Is everyone calling Jayden Daniels 5, or is this just a you thing?
No, it's a whole thing. Like
Does this sound like Steelers fans would call Roethlisberger 7, and then no one else did?
No, 5. Faith in 5.
Okay.
That is a.
right,
I did not invent that.
I'll
That
pay
is a thing that is.
I did.
Circulating, yeah.
Faith in 5. There
I
you
got
go.
faith in 5.
Faith in
I
5.
have great faith in 5.
No, I mean,
Lock. Commanders win.
Bird up. That was mine. I invented that.
Yeah,
Bird up.
that you did.
Yeah,
So you
so-
It's still
you
taking
made
off.
up bird up for the Falcons. I came over with faith in 5, so I think we need to switch teams for this weekend.
Yeah, no, that's not.
You're-
You invented green undershirts as well.
Yeah.
That's yours. All yours. No one
You
else
and
is
Rawls.
claiming that.
I didn't invent it. I just built a better mousetrap. Anyway, so I will to the point about the run defense here. Bucky Irving at 7,000. Commanders are bottom 5 in the NFL in terms of rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and yards per carry allowed to opposing running backs here. And we were talking about this before the show, Jay, in terms of Bucky Irving's prop line. It's in the high 70s.
Yeah. No. And look, they're 3-point favorites, so the market's expecting that they're going to have positive game script, and he's clearly taken over the backfield over Rashod White.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't be surprised if this is more of a throw script.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield's passing prop in this one on DraftKings is 244. I like the over on
no
that.
storm in Tampa. What's
It
going on
was
there?
very surprised for a game that has an over/under of 50.5.
Yeah, that's
for
surprising.
Baker Mayfield is playing at a super high level. That struck me as a low number.
Our final game here, guys, it's the Monday night one, the closest spread of the entire playoff slate in the openers here. Vikings just -1.5, traveling to play the Rams. The over-under, no surprise, it's 47.5. And Lawrence Puka Nacua, a pretty hefty price here at 7,600 because the target share for him, when healthy, has been absolutely insane this year.
The price is warranted. 21.8 fantasy points per game in his 9 full games this season. This Rams passing game has went from a 1A, 1B situation to Puka is the guy. He'll be one of the top receivers picked next year in fantasy, and that starts here against the Vikings defense, who they could be had on the back end.
I think Kyren Williams at 7,400 is really interesting here. This is a guy who averaged over 25 touches a game in his final 4. We just saw what Jahmyr Gibbs did to this Vikings defense last week as well. They're middle of the pack, the Vikings are, against the run over the last 4 weeks. And so I do think at home, Kyren gets a big workload here. Quickly, I'll mention that during the regular season, only one team in the NFL allowed more fantasy points to opposing tight ends than the Los Angeles Rams. So TJ Hawkinson at 4,200, if you're deciding to sort of punt tight end, I think becomes interesting as well.
Yep.
Justin Jefferson at 8,100, is it worth paying the big price on? Knowing the total in this game and that Sam Darnold, I mean, he was open last week. Darnold just didn't get to him.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what this Vikings offense looks like after that game, and I wonder if
I think
there
they'll
were
rebound.
elements that were solved. But yeah, I suspect they just played at too high of a level consistently across the whole season. But I would be looking more for guys like Cooper Kupp in the kind of lower end than Justin Jefferson. I think that like Cooper Kupp, his obituary has seemingly been written. He just has not played well over the past month. I think the fact that he has had the week off and coming into this, and he'll get right. I mean, he went 5 for 51 on the touchdown the last time they played Minnesota. So I think that with the attention that Nacua will get, wouldn't be surprised, playoff game, Stafford looking for Kupp, and he hits 50 yards.
He had a lot of weeks off.
Yeah.
He ain't
Believe me,
scored in 3 games.
Yeah, he killed me in my dynasty playoffs.
What do you think that got?
Sure.
Is it just over?
I mean, I don't think it's over, but I think there's clearly McVay resting the team.
Yeah.
He falls into that. I think the body it's been breaking down for 3 years now, and eventually you hit a toll, like a breaking point.
Before we go to break, just very quickly, while we're talking about this game that will be in Los Angeles, I just want to take one moment here just to say, I have seen the images of what Los Angeles is going through with those fires, and it's unbelievable and it's awful. And I've had friends that they have lost their houses. I have friends that they're evacuating. I'm sure everyone has people that have been affected by this. So anyway, just on behalf of the entire show, are just thoughts and prayers. Words are inadequate, but it's just if you are out there and you can help in any way, please do. There's a number of great organizations out there that are out there providing relief for people out there, because it's just, the scenes are heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well said, Matthew. I think we all second that. We're going to take our first break. When we're back, our playoff talk continues. We're going to have the top-ranked players for all playoff fantasy formats in What's on Tap right after this. America's top high school football prospects face off in the annual All-American Bowl presented by America's Navy this Saturday at 1 p.m. on NBC and Peacock.
Speaking of prospects, very own Connor Rogers has his latest mock draft up. Head to NBCsports.com/NFL/draft to see who your team might snag. Connor, what's the latest on mock 2.0? My Giants getting a quarterback?
They did. They got Shakir Sanders. And it's going to be interesting how things change after this
I hope he goes there.
After this college football playoff. If Drew Aller ends up changing his mind, he's saying so far that it's looking like he's going back to school.
Okay.
He's about one good game away from potentially entering this draft and going top 3.
Okay, so
Wow.
So we could rip up the whole mock draft in about a week or 2.
Was it tough for you figuring out who you should put into the commander selection because we're so perfect top to bottom? Like, these guys shouldn't draft because they don't need anything.
It was really easy. A nice offensive tackle at 26.
We need that.
Done.
We need that.
And
we could use some secondary help.
There's
like,
some depth in both areas. Like things are really coming up Commanders these days. It's crazy.
Yeah.
He waited long enough.
Feels like Shane, Dable, and Sanders is a match made in heaven.
Yeah, I would. If I don't see him going to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I think I had Cam Ward go number 1 to Tennessee.
He
Shakir in New York.
He ain't gonna go. Shakir ain't gonna go to the Titans.
It feels like the Giants is by far the betting favorite.
Yeah.
And Malik Neighbors.
When the Titans fired their GM, Rand Carthon, Dion tweeted out, "Wow," as in, "Wow, why did y'all do that after only 2 years?" So I think it's safe to say Shakir won't go there. So Cam, good luck to Cam too going there because they don't seem like they know what's going on over there.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like, Sanders could be okay. I mean, with Brian Callahan, that might be a good offense for Shakir Sanders to be in.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, anyway, so we'll see. Fascinating to see, but we'll check that out on rotoworld.com, NBCsports.com, Connor Rogers, mock draft 2.0. No one works harder than that stuff. Like, everyone's just like, Matthew, you're so smart about dynasty. You're so smart about players. What's your secret? I'm like, Connor Rogers is my secret. I don't say that. I think that in my mind.
Yes.
I
think you gotta start saying it.
I'm like, well, I'm the man. But what I'm thinking is, thank God for Connor Rogers. Yeah, exactly. When you're as good as I am, you can get away with a green undershirt.
Oh, man. Yeah. All right, what's on tap? Brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. Sundays are easy to enjoy when they are full of football and the fridge is filled with beer. Or if you're starting any of these guys in fantasy formats this weekend, Matthew, your top-ranked players for this round of the playoffs.
Okay, so here's what I did. These rankings obviously available on NBCsports.com, rotoworld.com. They're free. Most people are entering some form of a playoff pool where you either draft players, you can pick a lineup, and so these rankings are based very simply like this. These are the players that I think will score the most total fantasy points over the course of the playoffs. I think it is a Bills-Lions Super Bowl. So I've done that. I think the Commanders beat the Buccaneers, right? So it's based on that, but it's also adjusted for positional scarcity, right? Like, do I think that Patrick Mahomes scores more fantasy points than Jayden Daniels? I do. But I think the difference between like Mahomes and Jayden Daniels in terms of total fantasy points over the course of the playoffs is not nearly as large as, say, the difference between Mark Andrews and like Zach Ertz, right? Or Cade Otton. Yeah. And so positional scarcity goes into this, and also just how I think the playoffs are going to play off. What are the probabilities of teams playing more than one game, playing 3 games, taking in the buys into account as well, because obviously the Lions are going to play one less game and the Chiefs are going to play one less game. I think the Bills, obviously, I have James Cook high. I have these. We'll talk about some of these Bills players, but the Bills are a team to target for me because I do think they go to the Super Bowl, and they're going to start this weekend with Denver. They play an extra game. One last thing that I'll just say here: if you would like to play in a free fantasy playoff format against myself, Connor, Jay, Lawrence, Big Show, producer Damian, backup producer Pete, producer Steven, all of us here at the Happy Hour, you can do that. You can go to playgl.co/happy hour. So it's a guillotine league format. You pick whatever players you want. There's some rules you'll see there. Pick whatever players you want, and as we go through the playoffs, the bottom 25% of the total pool gets cut. So you just set whatever lineup you want. No more than 3 players per any NFL team. 6-man bench, PPR scoring. playgl.co/happy hour. Come play it against us, 100% free.
And no one tell RotoPat because he's never lost in any of our games.
He never has. RotoPat's
2 for 2.
unbelievable.
Back to back.
Yeah, he is.
All right, let's take a look at those running back rankings. Here's Matthew's top 10. And Lawrence, no surprise to see Jahmyr Gibbs at the top there. And not only because of his talent, but the pathway the Lions have being one of the favorites, obviously, to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. He has the longevity.
Yeah, and you've seen what he's been able to do without David Montgomery, 32.5 points per game when he was in the 3 games he was out, but you still even like him with Montgomery coming back because he's averaged 19 fantasy points in 14 games with Montgomery. So we like Jahmyr Gibbs with or without. Obviously, we like seeing him getting the whole workload, but still, Jahmyr Gibbs is a big play waiting to happen every single time he touches the ball.
Yep. I'm stunned that James Cook is only set at 59.5 rushing yards in the market, by the way. As your RB4, I think he's going to outperform that. I mean, they're 8.5-point favorites, and they should, in theory, be in a run script.
He's 5th among running backs in points per touch. He's scored in 12 of his 16 games so far this season. And again, gets cold. Teams tend to run more in the playoffs. Like, I do think these are cliches, but cliches are cliches for a reason because they're often true, which is you play good defense. You want to run the ball, especially in the cold weather, especially when you're in the playoffs, especially in your home. You get a little bit more conservative on offense. You try to limit the turnovers. And so I do think James Cook gets a heavy workload as a home favorite. And like I said, I think the Bills are in the Super Bowl.
All right, let's take a look at the wide receivers. Here's the top 10, and also sticking with the theme of the Lions here, Matthew. Of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown near the top, and how about a sneakier play in Jameson Williams right at number 10?
Yeah, I mean, both guys, right? Yes, they have the bye this week, but they're playing at home. They've done very, very well. Jared Goff is playing at a super high level. It's worth noting that Amon-Ra St. Brown has a 27% target share as well. Jameson Williams has sort of come into his own this year. It's those two guys in the passing attack, and Jared Goff is playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL.
Lawrence, you brought up A.J. Brown before, basically being one of the deciding factors in this game. And the Eagles, they don't have the bye, so they get that extra game that the Lions don't potentially.
Yeah, and that's what you love to see. There's where the real value is, when you could pick a team that is going to play in the wild card, but you also like them to go deep in the playoffs. A.J. Brown, at least a 31% target share in 10 of the 12 games he's finished this season. We talked about it earlier, them throwing the go ball, and he's the main beneficiary of that.
Let's look at the quarterbacks here. Here's the top 10. No surprise, Lamar Jackson, who doesn't have the bye. He's number 1 there, Jay. Josh Allen, number 2, who also doesn't have the bye, but just what these two guys can do on any spot with their legs and with their arm makes them 1 and 2 easily.
Yeah, we've already seen Lamar Jackson light up the Steelers a few weeks ago. It would be a little concerned. There might be some variance, some downside with Lamar, just given that no Zay Flowers, like he's going up against a good defense, and his best wide receiver is Rashod Bateman, but it's still Lamar Jackson. You expect that he's going to put on a show, as he always does.
He's had at least 20 fantasy points in 14 of 17 games this year.
Seems good.
One of the knocks against Lamar Jackson previously to this season was he'd have these really high games, and then he would just fantasy-wise disappear because they'd be run heavy, the defense would play well, but just the consistency of his fantasy value this year has been nothing short of phenomenal. You expect that to continue in the playoffs, where I think the Ravens have a very real chance to be playing for the AFC title.
And one quick thing on Lamar, producer Damien let me know this before the show that Lamar scored the most fantasy points of any quarterback ever in a full season. He broke Patrick Mahomes' record from 2022. And that speaks to the consistency of those 20-point games.
Let's close things out with the tight ends here. Sam Laporta at number 2 goes back to our theme of longevity. Mark Andrews at number 1 there, Matthew. Feels like Mark Andrews was fantasy irrelevant the way the season started and then totally turned the page the back half of the year.
Yeah, we talked about this. As I mentioned earlier, he's now scored in 6 straight games. He's got 11 touchdowns in his past 12 games. No Zay Flowers in this game, so more of a narrow target tree. And when you're in the playoffs, what do? You're looking for your veterans. Mark Andrews is a guy that's always sort of where Lamar Jackson needs him to be as well. Laporta's pretty interesting as well. Averaged 15 points over his final 6 games, 15 per game, which I think was very quiet. And look, it was a down year for Travis Kelce by his standards, but one of the reasons why he played less snaps is for this time right now. He gets another week off, but obviously as they get in the playoffs, he's going to be playing a ton of snaps. He's the guy that Mahomes is going to look for. 4 playoff games last year, Travis Kelce averaged 21.5 fantasy points per game. He's got a 24% target share this season, which is highest among all the tight ends that actually made the playoffs. So as we get into the playoffs, expect to see a lot of 87 and then a lot of shots to the stadium suites where Taylor will be cheering him on. So that's what I expect to see a lot of in the playoffs.
Sunday night, it's a wild card matchup in the Bay, and only one team will be left standing. Jayden Daniels leads the Commanders against Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers.
Let's
go.
It's
wild card weekend powered by Verizon. Sunday, 7:30 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We're taking our last break. When we're back, of course, we're closing things out with Last Call we got our favorite player props for Wild Card
Hail
Weekend.
the Commanders, hail victory. I promise to wear the green T-shirt under the Jayden Daniels jersey if they win on Monday.
DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. It's time for last call. Here's the most bet wild card player props. Everybody loves the Chargers for some reason in wild card weekend player props. Good luck, world.
He's McConkey. Of course they do.
It's very fair. I was more talking about the Dobbins, but it's not crazy. Not crazy. Rush attempts. All right, Jay, what do you got for us?
I'm taking Mike Evans under 75.5 receiving yards. Looks
Conquering his demons?
Yeah, looks
Marshawn
like Marshawn
Lattimore?
Lattimore is going to play. Here's the beauty of this bet. Pass interference doesn't count for receiving yards. Mike Evans has only gone over this number 5 times all season. I think Marshawn Lattimore keeps him in check or holds him.
All right, Lawrence, what do you
I like
That's
it.
a good
Well,
strategy.
you know how I do. I'm a bargain shopper here. I'm going to go with Javonte Williams, 25 rushing yards, at least at plus 330. He's no longer the lead running back. That's Jaleel McLaughlin now. However, he rushed for 28 last game, 24 the game before that. And this Bills defense, I've noticed this season, they struggle a little bit with the bigger running backs. Not only Derrick Henry, but Ramondre Stevenson too. So as long as the Broncos can run the ball, I think Javonte Williams gets some opportunities.
Plus 330.
I like that.
You just
Right.
need
25 yards.
Lawrence plus Money Jackson.
That's a fun bet because you're on your toes the whole time, like standing in front of the TV waiting for it.
And look, the past 2 games, he's had runs of at least 10 yards. So we ain't used to that from him. So he kind of on a roll.
He's
All right,
going.
Matthew.
So what? It's at 30.
330, yeah.
330.
Yeah, plus
For,
330.
to get 25 rushing yards.
25 rushing yards.
I like that a lot. I'm taking George Pickens over 54.5 receiving yards. What could go wrong betting on George Pickens? What could possibly go wrong? Look, you think about Week 11 against these Ravens. He went 8 for 89. He had a 37.5% target share. They're 9.5-point underdogs. They're going to have to throw. What's the weakness of the Baltimore defense? It's that secondary. They're going to take some deep shots. Ravens have allowed at least 55 yards to a singular wide receiver in every game this year. Every game this year. So you're telling me a wide receiver gets 55 yards against them? I'm saying it's George Pickens.
I'll go with Matthew Stafford over 32.5 pass attempts. That over-under is approaching 50. I think the Rams are going to have to throw the ball and throw often against Minnesota's defense.
I like that as well. Listen, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Lawrence, Jay, and Connor, I'm Matthew Barry. Good luck in Wild Card Weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Barry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.